Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call this special quorum court to order, and the prayer and the pledge is going to be handled by Mr. Cochran. Is not here. We're going to ask Tom to please take up care of this.
You join me in prayer. Our precious Heavenly Father, we are eternally grateful for your mercy and your grace. And as we convene for this meeting tonight, Father, we ask that you would give us wisdom to carry forth the county's business in an appropriate and meaningful way. We ask it in Christ's name and for his sake. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Tom. Carly, would you please call the roll?
Okay. Daniel Balls.
Here.
Harvey Bowman.
Here.
Rick Cochran. Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ecke.
Here.
John Furman. Ann Harbison.
Here.
Sharon Lloyd.
Here.
Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison.
Here.
Sue Madison.
Here.
Joel Maxwell.
Here.
Joe Patterson.
Here.
Butch Pond.
Here.
Bill Ussery.
Quorum present. You have the agenda in front of you. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The agenda is adopted. The next thing we have is an emergency ordinance. Butch?
Yes, Steve.
An emergency ordinance directing an investigation into the construction of the Stonewall and Harvey Dowell bridges and related matters. Whereas it has become apparent that the engineer's plans were not followed in the construction of the Stonewall and Harvey Dowell bridges, and whereas the goals of the county judge and the quorum court are to ensure the safety of the citizens of Washington County, to determine why and how the construction of the aforesaid bridges deviated from plans, and to prevent such occurrences from happening in the future, and whereas it appears no outside agency is willing to investigate these matters on behalf of the county, now therefore be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington of the County of Washington, State of Arkansas. Article 1. The Quorum Court hereby directs an investigation into the construction of the Stonewall and Harvey Dowell bridges by a two-person team consisting of one representative from the county judge's office and one justice of the peace. The representative from the county judge's office shall be Chief of Staff Dan Short. The Quorum Court's representative shall be Justice of the Peace Eva Madison. If Ms. Madison is unable to serve, then the Court's representative shall be Justice of the Peace Tom Lundstrom. If neither Ms. Madison nor Mr. Lundstrom is able to serve, then the Quorum Court's representative shall be Justice of the Peace Bill Ussery. Article 2. The investigative team formed by this ordinance shall work in tandem. They shall both be present while witnesses are interviewed and documents or other evidence is examined. Article 3. Witness statements shall be reduced to writing and submitted in the form of sworn affidavits whenever possible. Article 4. The investigation should answer at least the following questions. A. Did the road department build the Stonewall Bridge and the Harvey Dowell Bridge to engineer specifications? If the answer to this question is no for either or both bridges, then also answer the following questions. 1. In what specific way or ways did the road department personnel fail to follow the engineer's specifications? 2. Who specifically was personally responsible for not following each individual item of the engineer's specific guidance? 3. When an individual item of the engineer's specific guidance was not followed, did anyone in the road department receive clearance from the engineer to deviate from his plan? And when the person from the road department requested deviation from the plan, did that person ensure that the variance from the engineer's plan is actually what occurred on the work site? 4. For each item of variance or deviation from the engineer's specific guidance, why did the persons or persons in charge of that decisions make that decision? 5. Who besides the person or persons making the decision or decisions to deviate from the engineer's guidance knew about that decision? The answer to this question should include the identity of the person with knowledge that the plan wasn't followed, his or her position with the county at the time he or she was made aware that the plan wasn't being followed, what exactly he or she learned about the plans not being followed, the date and time he or she came to know, the method of communication, and the source of the knowledge. D. Did anyone employed by the Washington County, to include without limitation elected officials, exempt or non-exempt staff, besides George Braswell, notify the county judge, the county chief of staff, the county attorney, or the judge's executive assistant that the engineer's plans were not being followed. If the answer to this question is yes, provide the date and time of each notification, the method of the communication, the verbatim contents, if available, of said communication, and if a verbatim recitation is not possible, an accurate summary, and the person to whom the communication was made. C, does there now exist, or has there existed at any time relevant to the subject matter of this investigation, a culture or climate within the road department that would give employees an impression that it is permissible to deviate from written instructions, like the engineer's plans at issue in this investigation? If so, explain the facts and circumstance relevant to this culture or climate. D, actually, it appears, yeah, it should be D. I'm sorry. Does there now exist, or has there existed at any time relevant to the subject matter of this investigation, a culture or climate within the road department that would give employees a reasonable, justifiable impression that legitimate concerns within the department should not be expressed to the supervisory chain? If so, explain the facts and circumstances relevant to this culture or climate. Article 5, all current county employees are directed to cooperate in good faith with the investigative team. The investigative team shall also have full access to county resources in order to complete a thorough and timely investigation. The county attorney shall be available for legal advice. Article 6, in the event the investigative team determines that there is a reasonable possibility that a criminal violation of county, state, or federal law occurred, the investigation shall be immediately suspended and the appropriate law enforcement agency notified. The investigative team shall also promptly notify the quorum court and the county judge of the suspension of the investigation. Article 7, the investigative report, together with all affidavits and exhibits, shall be due to the county judge and the quorum court 2 weeks from the date of the passage of this ordinance. Should the investigative team require more time to complete its report, they shall request such time from the county judge and the quorum court. Article 8, emergency clause. It is hereby determined that it is in the best interest of the citizens of Washington County that this ordinance go into effect immediately, as the status of bridges in Washington County and the construction of the same is an area of intense and justifiable public concern. Therefore, an emergency is declared to exist, and this ordinance shall be and is effective from the date of its passage.
Thank you, Steve.
Turn your mic on, Butch, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. It appears to me that this emergency ordinance covers all the things we discussed and agreed on, and for the sake of discussion, I would move to pass 5.1.
I have a motion and a second. No second?
I didn't hear a second,
No.
Judge.
Did you make a second? Thank you, Dennis. Okay, we are open for discussion. Harvey?
Judge, in thinking about this process, I kept coming up with issues that Dan is directly in the line of responsibility for transmitting information to the road department and back to you. In that situation, it appears to me that there could be a conflict there, both with employees and so forth that answer to him. And so in light of that, I think that we need to look at outside sources. When we began looking for people to do an investigation, we were asking about somebody outside our normal connection group. I'm in Kiwanis with a guy by the name of Carl, what's his last name? Gales. Carl is an engineer, and if you look at this other sheet that you got on your desk, this is information about Carl. He graduated in '64 in engineering and has been building bridges even prior to that time. He was designing bridges. If you glance over this thing, you can see that he's worked on the interstate highway bridges and so forth. He has a lot of international experience, state experience, you name it, and this guy's been there and done that. The other pages goes back and looks at his work history and some of the things he is still working on. So what I want to do is ask that we include Carl as part of this investigative committee, because he will be able to bring information to us about what decisions made at the road department, how it would affect the quality of the bridge, and he would bring technology to the situation that nobody else, I think, in this courtroom would be able to bring to us. His years of experience with manufacturing, with modification, with correction of errors and so forth, I think would be a tremendous addition. And if you would, sir, if you would permit, I would like for you to ask Carl to come forward and give you guys a chance to ask him some questions about his background and possible interest in helping us with this investigation.
Steve?
Oh, Judge, I didn't mean to, again, interrupt any JP. Typically, I would just point out to the court, when y'all go to outside, not typically, when you go to outside consultants or professional services, you do a request for qualifications. Not saying it can't be done in this case, Harvey, but it seems to me that that's the proper procedure to go through, is to open it up for RFQs. So just throwing that out there for the court to keep in mind.
Would you explain that process?
Request for qualifications. It's akin to bidding, but essentially it's to give an opportunity. You open it up and say, hey, we have a need for whatever service. In this case, is you're saying, Harvey, forensic engineering or investigative engineering, whatever the case may be. And in that case, you put that out there through a RFQ process that we have in the county, where we throw it out to the general public, ask for qualifications from people, and obviously your friend, your acquaintance would be able to submit that, but also say, for example, in addition to your RFQ, tell us, read us your resume, tell us how much you're going to cost by the hour, and that sort of thing. That's typically what's done there.
I told Mr. Gales this would be a public service, that he would not be compensated at all for his services. And he agreed to that.
I'm finished, Judge.
Okay. Ann?
Oh, okay. Oh, my God. I put a lot of thought into this, and I want to amend the ordinance that, well, let me read what I've written first, and then I want to amend it with all of those things that we have asked to do, but I would like for a private investigator to be hired to do it. I supported the choice of Eva Madison and Dan Short to investigate how Washington County Road Department constructs bridges, particularly the Stonewall Bridge and the Harvey Dow Bridge. The judge has already informed us, the Quorum Court, that the blueprints were not always followed exactly. Eva, in her acceptance letter to the county judge, questioned Dan Short's ability to be fair and impartial in this investigation. I had several phone calls over the weekend questioning whether Eva Madison could be fair and impartial. This I know that Eva was with Jeff Williams on election night. This I witnessed myself. Jeff Williams made the video showing improper construction. Therefore, I believe as a court we made a mistake, thinking that we could investigate the bridge situation with internal people. Therefore, I'm going to make a motion or amendment that a private investigator be hired to investigate the bridge situation. As Bill Usry properly stated, when the train runs off the track, we need to do something. This is not going to be cheap, and I know that the budget is tight. And I know that it's going to cost probably somewhere around anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000 to get a private investigator to do this properly. So I'm going to amend the motion that we insert private investigator and that we send it out an RFQ to see how many people are interested in doing this.
Now, that's an amendment to the motion. Is that
Yes.
correct? So now we need to
Has to have a
Butch, now,
second.
this will you accept this as a friendly amendment?
I will not.
Okay.
No, ma'am.
Okay, so do we have a second on Ann's motion?
I'll second.
Okay, we have so now we need to,
Judge, may I make an inquiry,
yes,
please?
please.
And what language do you seek to strike from? And I'm guessing that it's
It's just the investigative team that we would insert.
Article 2?
Is it Article 2?
That talks about the investigation.
No, it would be Article 1.
Be Article
Be
1,
Article
yeah.
1.
so.
And Article 2 would have
Strike
to
all
be-
after the word by and insert by a and private investigator.
Right.
Karen, do you have an unedited copy of this? Because I just inked all over mine.
I've got mine.
Okay.
I've got mine here.
In case we return to the main ordinance. And then one other question. Wherever it says investigative team, I take it you would just say investigator?
Investigator, correct.
I think I have enough to go on for y'all to discuss now.
Yes.
I have no idea who thinks they saw me with Jeff Williams on election night, but I was in this room on
You
election
were
night.
with Jeff Williams. I was here.
We were all in the room together.
We're not going to have any arguments. That's ended now.
Well, do I still have the floor?
Yes.
Okay. I think the notion that I would somehow be biased in this is really preposterous because I think in my work as an attorney, I strive very hard to get to the bottom of things, to figure out the truth of things. I have put a lot of time and thought in this investigation already just over the weekend. The goal, as I've been saying all along, is to find the truth. That's all we want. And if you don't trust me to be impartial, then that's disappointing because that was absolutely my goal in accepting the position. I think that a private investigator would be perhaps cost prohibitive. I was willing to give up 2 weeks of my legal practice to do this at no cost to the county. So I'm not sure how that really compares. Anyway, I'll just speak to the amendment. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Not right now, Judge. There's a...
Wait, we've got Joe.
I would think that getting someone with his experience that's not going to charge anything with Dan, Eva, and this fellow here, that would probably be about as good as it gets without spending a lot of money. That would be my thinking on it. I would think it'd be a good way to go. But I don't know the particulars, Steve, of working it out where it has to be bid if it's free. I mean, there's nothing to bid, but I mean, it still has to be opened up, I suppose.
I just don't want to violate the RFQ, and I'll leave
I
that up to Steve's judgment.
Yeah, I don't know. Most people's not going to want to do it for nothing, probably. But anyway, thank you. That's my opinion.
Tom?
I basically want to say similar to what Joe was saying. I read this man's qualifications, and I'm impressed with them. When it comes to Dan Short, I would in no way question his integrity or honesty, regardless of what his job is, any more than I would Eva's. So, but I would like to see Carl involved in this investigation because of his vast experience. I mean, he's built railroad bridges over the Arkansas River. You know, that's some bridge experience. And although I've got a lot of confidence in Dan and Eva's ability to question and to interrogate and so forth, I don't have a lot of confidence in their bridge building ability. You know, that's been a problem with our road department already, our bridge department. So anyway, I would like to see somebody like Carl. He's just a citizen volunteering to help us with this investigation. I don't want to violate any laws either, but I personally don't see where we would be violating one, although I don't have the legal education Mr. Zaga does. But I would like to see this happen and have this 3-member team do this investigation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Sue?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd first like to know if J.B. Harbison did any research on how much an investigator might cost, because I think that is a concern, and we would need to know a ballpark number here, realizing that an RFQ might be surprising even after we had a ballpark number. But are you aware if any preliminaries have been done?
Are you talking about me? No, I have not done any investigation as of yet because I was wanting to see what the court wanted to do.
Well, do we have anybody on staff who could estimate what a PI would cost?
Not tonight.
$60. Dan may know.
Judge, I was a private investigator for about a year before I came to work with you.
He needs to take a mic.
Why don't you come talk at the mic, Dan, please, if you don't mind?
This is in no way a recommendation of a standard. While I didn't have any particular knowledge as far as building bridges, as Tom says, or concrete work, just as a private investigator, I charge $75 an hour with a 3-day minimum on any case that I took, and then all expenses would be paid by the client also. That's general investigation. So some states it's a lot higher. I work with some people from other states who got a higher rate than that. When you start talking about investigation with a specific goal and information, such as any professional knowledge like engineering or medical, I would assume it would be higher, much higher than that. That's about all I can say.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Okay, then I'm assuming, based on the math that I've just done for the 2 weeks, that would be $6,000.
Plus expenses.
But would 2 weeks then be sufficient? I mean, we have been discussing this issue since before I came on the court, back in November when we got the letter from Mr. Braswell, and we don't have any answers yet. I would also like to point out that I think there is widespread knowledge that the bridges weren't built according to plans. That's almost an established fact. We want to know why they weren't built according to plans and who was responsible for the decision that they built not according to plans. I'm still baffled why we would hire an engineer and go to the expense of hiring an engineer and then disregard his plans. And I want to know why that happened. So it's not just important that we have an engineer. I think that's certainly an asset to the investigation. But I think we may need an additional impartial person. I mean, I don't see how Mr. Short can possibly be impartial when this, in a sense, has happened under the county judge's office's watch, and he is the lead person within the county judge's office. I doubt seriously if county road employees are going to feel comfortable talking to him. So I realize I've gotten off the amendment, but I don't think we, at this point tonight, know what a private investigator would cost us or how long it would take and how much longer this issue would drag out. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Lisa, I'm sorry.
Judge, if a citizen is volunteering their time and their expertise, is an RFQ required for them volunteering?
Typically, an RFQ is done where you're planning to spend money. So,
but if no money was being spent on
if he's going to commit to volunteering his time, then I would say no. I think there are not legal issues around that, but assuming that the main motion were to pass, or the main ordinance were to pass without Ms. Harbison's amendment, you're going to have discussions about how you now have a 3-person team as opposed to 2. But I don't think that's more of a practical issue than a legal issue.
I'd like to know if Mr. Gales is planning on volunteering as a citizen, his time, his expertise, and if he can talk to us about that, and if he's volunteering. Being on the Budget and Finance Committee, I like coupons and I like free. And I like citizens who are willing to come forth like he's willing to come forth. And I think we need to consider it and give him the due respect to listen to what he has to say if it's free.
parliamentary-wise, do we not need to take care of the amendment first?
Yes, you do. That's a good point of order, Mr. Dennis.
Point of order, I guess. I was thinking that Mr. Bowman had actually mentioned the engineer first before we made the motion or the amendment, so I'm not sure. I'm kind of confused as to which should come next.
He did
All right.
ask.
Okay. The amendment goes to the main motion. Y'all have to deal with that first. And assuming whatever you do with the main motion, with the amendment, will partially drive what Harvey said.
So we want discussion on the amendment.
Okay, so
You should be on the amendment now.
Harvey?
Guys, I think it's really interesting that Ann makes an issue about Eva's being objective. The judge recommended Eva for this job as a first choice. You know, as far as I'm concerned, that speaks volumes about the expectations from Eva. And you know, let's be fair about this thing. Eva's a hardworking, diligent investigator in her personal business and for the court. And to imply that she's not going to be fair is just unfair. So, you know, I think we need to back off on that and get on with the fact the judge
Harvey,
recommended her.
let's go ahead and let's carry this through without getting into personalities. I think we've gone far enough on that. Ann's next. You got your...
Okay, on the amendment, and I'm going to read what Eva wrote to the county judge and accepting her duty as a part of this investigation. Finally, I feel compelled to note that I do share some of Justice Sue Madison's concerns about Mr. Short's role in the investigation. While I have no doubt his past experience working for the Arkansas State Police makes him a skilled interviewer and investigator, we have to acknowledge that he is someone who should be interviewed in the investigation. For instance, George Braswell alleges that he met with you and Mr. Short in October of 2013 regarding the Harvey Dow Bridge. Mr. Short should be asked about this meeting. This is just one example. In addition, because Mr. Short is your chief of staff and technically in the chain of command of the road department, I have to wonder whether every witness will feel comfortable speaking freely in front of him. At the same time, I realize some witnesses may not want to speak to me either, but I come into this situation as much more of an outsider than Mr. Short. The court should discuss how to handle these issues. Now, Eva brought this up herself, and this is why I'm making this recommendation.
Is that all, Ann?
Yes.
John?
Can we clarify that? I apologize for coming in late, but we speak to the amendment, just so I was told sort of what it was. But.
John, Ann proposed to strike the two-person team consisting of Dan and Eva, and to do it with a private investigator, which would require us to send out an RFQ for private investigation services.
Thank you.
Daniel?
The reason I seconded Ann's motion is I actually think Eva would do a great job. I really think she would. There's certain laws that she follows. It has nothing to do with anybody's ability. I've fielded a lot of calls of people saying we don't need to be doing this internally. I do feel that if we can afford to go outside of the county and do it, I think we should. But I'm only one of the 15. So I think that if we can do it, we should. I haven't had anybody say that's a great idea that you guys came up with. I'm bringing my constituents' concerns to me, that they've come to me and bringing them out and letting everybody know. I do think it's great that we are putting this out there, but I do want to know it has nothing to do with anybody's abilities. It's what I think we should do. It's what people have asked me to do and bring to us. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Daniel. Butch?
I can kind of see the idea of hiring a private investigator, but when you do that, then you're going to have people coming to you, or I'll have them coming to me if they don't like what the private investigator determined. Well, he was handpicked by, whoever. Now, I was a little disappointed. We found no government entity that would come in and help us with this. And I would, one suggestion was appeal to the Association of Counties. It's out of their bailiwick, possibly, but that's what everybody else has told us. Now, as far as people going back and forth in here accusing one side or the other of not being trustworthy, and I don't care if it's somebody accusing Dan or somebody that's accusing Eva. I don't think if you had only Eva doing this investigation, I don't think that would float well. Nor would it if you had Dan. But both of them together gives it balance. And I'm impressed with the gentleman that came in, an experienced engineer that wants to sit in and be a part of this committee as a citizen of the county. I don't know this gentleman, but that sounds like a very good idea also. I really don't want to hear any of this anymore. These nasty letters and this name calling back and forth from either side. I don't care to hear somebody else speak up on Eva's behalf of how, trustworthy she is. Or on the other side either. This is just wasting a lot of time. I'm wasting some right now expressing my opinion. And I don't think it's going to shut it up. That's why we're at a standstill. We have people here who are not working together. Thank you.
Joel?
Well, I just want to say I think this is very healthy that we're moving forward and trying to get to the heart of the matter so we can resolve it and move on. And I think a lot of this ordinance and a lot of things are heading in the direction that I hear a lot of constituents want. I think what we want as a quorum court, et cetera. So I think that's very healthy. It seems like there's a little bit of a dichotomy between kind of what that investigative panel or group or person should look like. I would just like to suggest or submit for maybe some thought that one of the difficulties that keeps being brought up by several people here, as well as my constituents, is just the difficulty, as you mentioned, Ann, of having chief of staff interview people and need to be interviewed, and what conflict of interest that might bring or what lack of credibility that brings. And then just the technical expertise on bridge building. So it looks like we almost have what we need here, and that would be a hybrid of the private investigator, Eva, someone from the court at the judge's preference, and then this gentleman who's been so kind to volunteer his expertise for free. That's a bargain, as you mentioned, Lisa, and I think one that would be nice to capitalize on. So a hybrid of those three would give us, I think, all angles of expertise as well as credibility and no conflicts of interest. Thank you.
I am going to take a point of personal privilege. I think what we've got here, after I hear from the gentleman, I think we may have a situation with Eva and Dan, and this person as a third person. What I am doing, I want to see this move forward. I am tired of this. I'm tired of the bickering. I'm tired of the people in this county having doubts what we're doing. I'm ready to move forward. If this gentleman can tell us what he does, feels like he can serve on this committee without any prejudice one way or the other, I would like, if it's okay with the court, I'd like to hear what he's got to say. We have a motion right now. You go ahead and come forward. It's fine. And you may be just tied up just a little bit, but I would like for you to go ahead and have a seat.
Can I call a question?
So now we got amendment to the motion. So Tom wants to call for the question to vote on Ann's amendment. Is this correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any more discussion?
So if we vote yes, we are supporting Ann's
That's
amendment.
correct. And that would be to bring in a private investigator and dissolve the committee as it stands.
Okay, thank you.
Is everybody in agreement? Okay, Carly, would you call the roll, please, on the amendment?
John Furman,
No.
Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
No.
Tom Lundstrom,
No.
Eva Madison,
No.
Sue Madison,
No.
Joel Maxwell,
No.
Joe Patterson,
No.
Butch Pond,
No.
Bill Ussery,
No.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
No.
Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
No.
Lisa Ecke,
No.
Ann's motion fails. So now we're back to the first motion. And Steve, can we hear comments from this gentleman now?
Judge, if it's the court's pleasure, you can take comment from him now.
Would you please identify yourself, sir? Turn that mic on, if you will, sir. Hit that little red button. There you go. He's an
All right.
engineer. He knows how.
That's highly technical. I got one of these iPhones.
If you would just give us a little bit of your background. It doesn't
Okay.
have to be lengthy in a lot of detail.
Okay.
But just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I live out at 18772 Harmon Road in the county. And I have a strong feeling about counties. I began my business in 1971 down in Greenwood, Arkansas. One of my major projects was Ben Guerin National Park, County Park down there. Worked with the county judge and all the county members. During times when I've had as many as 20 cities as a consulting engineering firm in Oklahoma. My primary business is in Oklahoma. I presently have 5 projects active over there. When Harvey and I have been talking about this thing up at Kiwanis, and I hear all of this and reading the paper, and the other day I called Mr. Dan. I know Mr. Dan Short. I called him, but he didn't call me back, and the reason I called him, I was going to say, hey, Dan, if you need any help from an old engineer, I'll be glad to help you. I think the county needs some help. I think all of you are volunteers. Y'all are not doing this for the money. There ain't enough money being a county, being on the county board to pay for the time you spend. So if I can give you a little bit of my expertise and help you, I would be very glad to. And that's my position. I've traveled all over the world. I've took a lot out of Arkansas. Y'all have kept my family safe while I've gone everywhere. So I owe a little bit back to Arkansas and to this county.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for him?
I have one.
Hang on just a minute. Okay, Dan.
When did you call me?
I called you one day last week.
I did. I never got the call.
But it wasn't. But that was what I was going to say. Hey, Dan, if you need a little help, well, I'm available.
I apologize for not getting back to you.
Okay.
Robert.
I would amend the motion that we put Carl Gales as an addition to the 2 that are already on, Eva and.
Eva?
I think in recognition of the time he's donating, we shouldn't include him necessarily as a part of the team, but perhaps a technical advisor to the team. I wouldn't want to somehow obligate him to sit through all of the interviews that may not pertain to the actual bridge building aspects. So I would welcome him in that respect.
I was about to say, I don't know that you could ordain him without paying him. And I don't mean to be flipped by that, but that essentially, this is not a contract, it's a volunteer service.
No, it's volunteer
Yes, sir.
service.
So,
We do,
Robert, I think that's...
Okay.
We belong,
As was it.
Harvey and I belong to Kiwanis. We do a lot of service stuff nowadays because we're old.
Okay, now we got an amendment.
Well, it was a friendly.
There's a friendly amendment.
Friendly
Okay, so
second and
the-
friendly amendment.
Joel?
But it sounds like we're not actually changing the ordinance if he's not part of the team, he's just a consultant, is that correct?
I think that I understand, let me make sure I understand what I'm adding to the language. Robert, you want me to include in Article 1 with technical advisor, tell me your name again, sir.
Carl Gay.
Spell the last name for me.
Guy asked me how to spell it. It's like the wind.
Yes, sir. All right.
Gales.
And are you a PE with that?
Yes.
Okay. So at the end of Article 1, adding with consultation, well, Eva's language was technical advisor, but essentially technical advisor, volunteer Carl Gales. I'm sorry. See?
He's
PE.
old too.
Correct. Okay. And Butch, are you still willing? Is that who seconded?
I did. Lisa did.
Lisa. Okay with the mover, the second, and the sponsor of the motion of the ordinance.
Sounds pretty friendly to me.
All right.
Okay.
Correct.
Any more discussion? Eva?
So I am the one that raised the issue in my letter. J.P. Madison had raised the question of whether Mr. Short had a conflict of interest participating in the investigation. And as I said Thursday night, I was left a little speechless by the turn of events, and so I really needed the night to think about it. And by the time I got to Friday morning, it was apparent to me that if I were looking at this like a case I were investigating in my law firm for a client, that I would want to interview Mr. Short. And I didn't quite know how to reconcile that with sitting with him as a co-investigator and then suddenly turning to need to interview him. And then that occurred to me, well, in the course of doing those interviews, then there's probably going to be reference to him. People are going to talk about him. He has an office at the road department. He's down there a lot. And so I thought, well, how are those people going to feel about talking about him in front of him? And that gave me concerns. So I put it out there for all of you all to think about and consider over the weekend. And I would say that I've talked to a lot of people about the bridge issues over the past several weeks and months. I've heard more on this specific issue than perhaps any other, because people are very concerned about, I think I agree with J.P. Balls, there's some concern about the propriety of us doing an internal investigation in the first place. And people have asked me about that, and I've said, well, I sort of think that's a lesser of evils at this point, because we didn't get anybody else who would do it. And so we're sort of down to, if nobody else is going to do it, we have to do it ourselves. But then there's this notion of sort of an insider being a part of the investigation. And that was unsettling to people. I think I counted 12 people who reached out to me to say that they had a problem with someone who's in the chain of command conducting the investigation. And in addition to that, you all know I've been very outspoken on this issue. As a result of that, I am contacted sometimes by people at the road department, sometimes by friends of people at the road department. There is, for whatever reason, and I don't necessarily blame that on Mr. Short, I don't know where responsibility for that falls, there is genuine fear at the road department of speaking out. People have called me and have said, I don't want to tell you my first name because there's 2 people who have my first name down here and you'll figure out who I am. Someone else relayed to me, someone outside the county, outside the court, relayed to me that they received a call from someone who said, I've canceled caller ID on my phone. You don't see my number, do you? Because I'm anonymous and I don't want you to know who I am. With those kind of fears out there, I am concerned about making sure that the witnesses feel comfortable and will be honest and open in their reports to us. That's why I set forth some of those procedural issues that I said, that it be at a neutral location and we have a court reporter. Those are to ensure the fairness to everybody involved, regardless of what side they're coming at this from. So of course, then, I think a reporter I was talking to said, well, what's the solution then? I said, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. And so I thought about it over the weekend, and I called my good friend, former JP Candy Clark, and I talked to her about it. I think we should use Candy. I asked her if she would do it. She said she would do it. It does not get us into the FOIA issues that including another JP would. And I know that the press has sort of had a negative reaction to our desire to sort of keep this out of the realm of FOIA, but I will say that it's unfair to employees to have to sit in a room and be part of an investigation involving their jobs with the press present. It's just not fair to them. The process will become open after all is said and done. So I would like to make a motion to amend the ordinance to replace Chief of Staff Dan Short with former Justice of the Peace Candy Clark.
You have a motion you haven't, or an amendment you haven't voted on yet with respect to Mr. Galey, I believe.
No, it was a friendly amendment, and the original movers
I'm sorry.
adopted it.
That's right. My mistake.
I think.
Yes, Ann.
This changes the whole ball game.
Wait, there's no second. Hold
I'll
on.
second it.
Okay.
This changes the ball game completely. And this is not fair.
Okay, Ann, hang on.
Discussed until there's a second.
Hang on.
was.
Yeah,
It was
she
seconded.
seconded
Yes,
it.
it was seconded.
See, this is why I think that it still needs to go outside, because Candy's too connected to the internal works of the county. It wouldn't be fair to her. We want an investigation. We want the facts. We don't want people turning the facts to the way they think the facts are. I couldn't, Eva's got a certain way she wants this investigation to come out. I mean, an investigation, if it's done correctly, it's not going to satisfy me. It's not going to satisfy the judge. Half the people on this court, it's not going to satisfy because it was done correctly. And, this changes, the ball game completely. And I can go with Mr. Gales and Eva and Dan Short. And that would be a good combination. But, see, you were underhanded in doing this and taking Dan Short off.
And let's don't.
Okay.
Let's
well,
stay out of the personalities.
Okay.
Hang on just a second, John.
I think that and I mean, I probably do it myself, but I think we're getting a little bit wound up about something that probably isn't quite as significant as the intent is to find out why a bridge was built wrong. And I think that the judge was very generous in proposing this. And I think that while it's not perfect, I think that Dan and Eva will ably serve on it. And if we find something else that's criminal or, obviously, then it would change the direction that we went. And I'm with the judge. Let's move this along. And if things start changing and Eva or Dan wants to bring us up and change the direction of this investigation, well, we can certainly do that. But at this point, let's just get going here. I mean, it's
so.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I've known Candy Clark since 1994, I believe. She came to me with some bills to run in the legislature, and she is a purposeful, precise, accurate kind of person. She knew what she wanted. She instructed me how to present the case, and she's very efficient. Candy doesn't take nonsense from anybody. I've come to consider her a friend, not a close friend, but a good friend, and I think she would make an excellent addition to this team. Candy is highly principled. I'm surprised she has the time, but she has people who work for her that will give her the time. And I think it would be done quickly if Candy were on board.
Bill?
I too have an issue with Mr. Short. No issue with him personally, but I think that we already have an integrity problem in the road department. I think we all agree with that. We have people that are really afraid to talk to the people right above them. And so we could only imagine talking with Mr. Short in there for them to be free to say exactly what they said, especially if they screwed something up or they lied to somebody. they're going to be really reluctant to say something to him. My suggestion is we get somebody from either maybe Benton County or one of the surrounding counties, somebody that works for their police department that could come and investigate this for us. It wouldn't be a private investigator, but it'd be somebody that we could work out a deal with. And to me, I think we need somebody completely unbiased. I think we need somebody's name who we don't recognize. I think that's going to be the best way to get an honest, fair assessment of what's going on so we know what the issue is, so we can take care of it and go on down the road. Thank you.
Let me ask a question here. Now, you're saying dissolve this committee and get someone from out of the county.
No, ma'am, I'm just saying replace Mr. Short with somebody who is outside the county.
Okay. Just a minute. Ann?
We need to get this problem solved, and we need an unbiased committee to do this. That's why I suggested a private investigator. But apparently, we don't want to do that. So, Candy is, I don't question Candy's integrity. She's a good person, but I don't think that she needs to be on this committee. I think we need to stick with, and the reason the judge, I feel, put Dan and Eva on it together was it was balanced in that he's an investigator, she's an attorney, and with technical advice now from an engineer, I think we need to stick with that. It's, I understand, I get the same thing, comments. I mean, I really had people that called me and said, can Eva do this fairly? And I said, at first I said, I don't see why not. But then she said, well, she has all these conflicts with the judge. And I said, I don't know. Is she a fair person? This is going to be, in my dealings, yes, she's been up front, but I'm not sure that, and I'm going with the judge's selection that when she selected you, that you would be fair and honest about what you did. And I think Dan will be fair and honest about what he does. Since we're doing it internally, there's going to be conflict because our constituents really don't understand someone on the Quorum Court and someone on staff doing this. I have confidence in Dan, and I would hope that Eva would be fair and honest and stick with the facts and give us the report that is gathered. And I think, since my motion failed, I'm willing to stick with this. But I'm not willing to amend it or put someone in place of Dan. He's the expert in investigating. Thank you.
Joel?
And I would have made this a motion a little bit earlier. I thought we were giving questions to Mr. Gale, so I was a little bit untimely, and I can hold it until we've resolved the motion on the table. But I still think job number one has to be to put this together with the least amount of contention possible so that then the answers have integrity and almost as important, have credibility with the county. And the one solution, again, that I see that brings the least amount of contention, Ms. Eva's already been vetted by the judge and is acceptable to this court. I think from what I'm anecdotally hearing, we're acceptable to Mr. Gale's offer of his expertise on the technical side, and Ms. Ann's suggestion of a private investigator that is not connected to anything outside of the county, and it relieves all of those contentious, will people answer openly and honestly, it relieves all that, and it really doesn't leave us a lot of problems to solve. So I just would reiterate that might be a great solution to resolving this without lots of infighting and still hold credibility once we bring answers to the table. Thank you, Judge.
Lisa?
Would there be somebody else in mind if Mr. Short wasn't agreeable by this court to do it, would there be somebody else not associated with the roads department within this building that could do it?
I have
Is
not,
there a second
I've not
choice?
thought of anyone else to that idea. I mean, like I say, I don't know of anyone else right now.
I agree with J.P. Lundstrom that on your credibility and your honesty and your integrity as an investigator, and for that we're thankful. But I also agree with J.P. Usry on having an employee face their boss is very intimidating. And I didn't realize that he had an office at the roads department, and that's hard. That's hard. I wish there was somebody in this county facilities that could be your second choice to do it without having to hire somebody else. I don't know. I agree with Joe, that's the best solution.
Ms. Sharon?
I agree that I feel like with Dan's skills as an investigator, I'd like to see him stay on, but I'd like to, have we established that Dan be in the room at all times? I mean, is that a possibility that with the court reporter, if the employee would like to have Dan excused, I mean, is that a possibility that it would just be Eva questioning them? I mean, does it say in the ordinance that Dan has to, it says he has to, I didn't find that he has to be there at all times. Work in tandem. My question's answered. Thank you.
Eva?
I offered Candy because I couldn't come up with anybody else. I'm open to somebody else. And I think that I'm hearing a lot of people who are concerned about this issue. And I just want us to find resolution to it. I want us to get together and be united on how we want to move this forward. I think there are a lot of concerns about having someone that may be a subject of the investigation be a part of the investigation. There's not really a way around that. If other people have suggestions, I'd love to hear them. I just was able to talk to Candy, and she said yes. And I think she had a lot of respect among her colleagues, and I think people know her. I'll say that because my integrity is very important to me, I am not sure that I could actually do the investigation alongside Mr. Short, because I would feel like in some ways the investigation wouldn't be fair to the witnesses involved. I mean, as Sharon's saying, does he step out of the room when certain topics come up? We can't do that. But my integrity is very important to me. I'm not going into this with any kind of predetermined notion of how I want it to come out at all. I want to find the truth, just like all of you. But I think to get to that truth, we have to have two people conducting the questioning that don't cause problems for what goes on in the room. And that was why I asked, I think for the protection of everyone in the room, that a court reporter be there, because that way there's no question about the words asked. I will know that everyone, not just you all, but everybody out there, everybody watching at home, will watch my work. Think about the pressure that puts. And I'm willing to take that on. But I can't be a part of an investigation where I think that it may be potentially conflicted from the beginning. And I don't say that to try to leverage things. I just have to tell you, I'm in a unique spot on the court because I've been asked to be the investigator. And I found a problem as a lawyer that I would not do the investigation this way in my practice, and I can't be a part of it in my quorum court work either. So if we can't come up with a solution, I think you're looking at your man.
Judge, may I ask a question to J.P. Madison, if I may?
Well, no, not right now, because I've got other people that are lined up to speak, so I have to take them in order.
Okay, thank you. Can you put my name down next, whenever, the bottom of the list?
The next one I have is Ann.
Did I hear you say if Dan Short's not on the committee that you will not do the investigation? If he is on the committee, you will take yourself off the committee?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Joe, you mentioned a private investigator. Were you thinking of one working with Dan and Eva?
Yes, I think that brings three facets to the investigation. One, the technical, as we mentioned. One from our body, who is outside the road department and not part of this process, Miss Eva. And third, a private investigator who would have the investigative skills to go along with that and be unbiased. So, yes.
Okay, let's go ahead now. Ann, are you finished?
Well, if we're going to go with a private investigator, then I think we need to take everybody off that has anything to do with the county. This is a issue with the public that we are investigating ourselves internally. I don't think I can bring, okay, thank you, Judge.
Robert?
Let me get rid of this. I sound like a drunk when I wear it because it feeds back. I'm sorry. I might sound like a drunk. I might sound like a drunk to you anyway. We were all elected by our constituents. Half my constituents undoubtedly trust me because they voted for me. Half of them probably don't. Probably the same with you. And of course, when all this stuff goes back out and on the papers and TV, and they get sound bites, they don't know what to believe and what they know. You talked about it. Is it difficult? About how difficult it is to be interviewed by. It's difficult to be interviewed by anyone. It's difficult to be interviewed by the press. But when you're under oath, it's even more difficult, and I understand that. But all of their testimony will be for everyone to read. So it doesn't matter if Dan Short is there taking the interview or you're there taking the interview. Freedom of Information Act, you're going to be able to read everything that everybody said anyway. So they're not saying it just to two people, they're saying it to all of us. And the reason we picked one person from the JP, because we couldn't have two in with the laws the way that they are, unless the media goes with us. And then that adds another pressure point for the people to talk to. I've gone from the day that I got the letter, 3 days after I got George Braswell's letter, I went and started looking at the bridge and taking pictures of the bridge. I have talked to every level in the bridge department with the exception of one retired gentleman. And there's not been a person one that was not willing to talk to me. Every one of them has told me exactly what they did. Every one of them has stood up like a man and said, we did this wrong. Not a one of them tried to lie. Not a one of them tried to turn. Two of them turned away, but they didn't walk away. So I think we're making a lot bigger deal of it than what it is. These people are going to tell the truth. It doesn't, whether it's Dan or whether it's Larry Spencer and Dan from the Holtmeyer, they're going to tell the truth. If you swear them in or tell them that they're signing an affidavit to tell the truth, they're going to tell the truth because the truth is really already out there. All we're doing is trying to get a legal and a true answer so that people were standing and saying, this is what I said. And, they're not criminals. They're just guys that were working on a bridge that made a mistake. They did try to cover some of it up, but they covered it up by asking their supervisor if they were right or if they were wrong in what they did. And the supervisor said, yes, it'll be okay. Right there is the end of the story. But we don't want to accept that. We want to go and investigate, and which I think is fine and I think is the right thing to do. But my gracious, all you're going out and doing is getting a legal answer from them saying you're going to tell the truth and then you're going to have it in writing, and that's the right thing to do. That way, if anybody wants to go back and question it, you can. You can go back and read it. As I said that one night, the fire chief said, go out, get everybody to write it down, bring it back, read it, and see where it matches up and where it doesn't match up, and you've got your story. So I'm ready to, I'm good with Eva. I'm good with Dan. I'm ready to vote yes and start investigating. or start interviewing. I know I'm not sure that investigating is really what you're doing, or I guess it's terminology, but it's not that difficult. It's not that difficult. Let's just decide who we want, go out and do it, have it written down, provide it to the press, provide it to everyone that needs to be provided to, and you've got your answer. Thank you.
I'm going to call the question.
Butch had, yeah, I've got.
Oh, okay,
I've got
sorry.
Butch, go ahead. Turn your mic on. Turn your mic on.
We're getting ready to vote on it. Eva's notion to replace Dan with Candy. And I'm gonna ask you, Eva, because I'm gonna have to say something if you can't withdraw that motion, and I don't want to.
You gotta say it then.
I don't want to say this, but I'm going to have to because it's my responsibility, and I can predict I'm going to be called a liar. But there is a conflict of interest there to put Eva and Candy on this as an investigative team. And
No, Eva. Okay.
And that being said, I'll have to tell you why that I know this, because they are set out to undermine the county judge, whether there's a mistake made by employees or not. Directly after money was appropriated for the animal shelter, one afternoon right here in this courtroom, after a committee meeting, Eva and Candy approached me and said, "We need your help. We have got to do what we can to get rid of Marilyn Edwards as county judge. She is a liberal." They didn't get an audible response from me, and I'm not going to demonstrate how I responded. But then I would have been breaking FOI. Now it's my responsibility to say that. And I was not wanting to say it, and you either can't remember or you can totally deny it. But I had to do that. It did happen. And it's...
I've got other people. Just a moment. Lisa?
As to the location of the interviews that are going to be conducted, I'd like to recommend using this Quorum courtroom for the interviews because we have audio and video of the interviews available to us. It's not the 5th floor, but I believe that if we're conducting the county business, it needs to be done here in the county courtroom. You're upstairs, 5th floor, that's fine. We're not going to do it up there. But I'm talking about in here because it's not going to cost us anything. It won't cost us anything to get a court recorder.
Lisa, this is not on the amendment, so let's come back here.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
I'm sorry.
That's fine.
You.
Thank you.
Okay. Tom?
Well, Eva has posed me a little bit of a problem because I think a lot of Candy's abilities. But I just want to say a word or two for those who are new here and didn't know Candy. Candy is as tough as nails. She has shut us all up from time to time as chair of the Finance Committee. So she's I would say a championship debater. She knows how to deal with words. So it gives me a quandary. But I just want the rest of you to know what kind of person she is. I think she would do an excellent job. But I guess I personally am going to stick with where we started out, just to let you know where I'm going to go with it. Because I'm like the judge, I'm kind of tired of fooling with it, and I'd like to get on with this investigation. Get it done and put to bed, get the bridges built right, get things straightened out, and be done with it for a change. Because you're never going to satisfy 100% of your constituents. Just forget it. It's not going to happen. You're never going to satisfy everybody in this county organization. That's not going to happen either. So what we need to do is find out the best we can what happened and put it to bed. So I'm going to support the system we already have in place. Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Tom. Ava?
I think Butch said that I wanted to get rid of the judge because she was a women's libber. Not sure.
You said she's a liberal. That's all you said.
Okay, I don't even know what that word means. I've never used that word. That's why I thought it meant women's libber. I have never said that remark. I'm appalled that I would be accused of such a thing. I'm getting the direction. I don't want to have to put my friend Candy Clark through a vote where she fails on the body that she just sat on. So I will withdraw my motion, but I cannot support the main motion with Mr. Short participating in the investigation. Thank
Joe?
you.
Joe, just a minute. Let's see if Dan's got what. Hang on just a second, if you don't mind. Dan?
No, I don't mind.
Thank you, Judge. I realize how difficult this decision is for all of you folks. We recognized initially that the best end results would come from an impartial investigation. And an investigation from people totally disconnected with the county, if we could get that. I say with the county, from the county judge's office. And we felt that because if we had done our own investigation, we felt like there would always be people who would say that we had slanted the investigation one way or another. And I agree with Judge Edwards. We want, and others who have said the same thing, we want the truth. We want the facts. We're not afraid of what that truth or those facts are. We want that out on the table so we could get on past this and get on with county government. And I understand Eva's comments about me. If I'm going to be interviewed according to her wishes as part of the investigative team, I don't see how I can be part of the investigative team. I really don't. I do think a two-person team is sufficient. You start flooding a room with 3 or 4 people trying to do an investigation and trying to talk with one person, it's very intimidating on that one person. So typically a protocol for an investigation is no more than 2 people. We have Mr. Gales, who has come forward and offered his expertise as an engineer and his time free of charge to help us with this investigation. I would recommend that he be accepted as one half of that team. We have other elected officials in this county. We have other elected officials in this county who are here because they were elected by all 15 districts here in this county. We have an individual sitting in this room, Mr. Russell Hill, that I think would be an acceptable and a very good second half to that team. Now, I don't know if he has the time for that or not. But like I said before, I'm not afraid of what's going to come out in the investigation. I just want to see the investigation completed. I don't think it'll take that long. We have a fairly limited number of people to interview from the bridge crew, and I think the most of the information that's going to be needed will come from those folks. So I would start with Mr. Gales, and then I would look around the room until I found somebody that everybody felt could be impartial, and that would be my team.
Judge, could I ask Mr. Short something?
Sure.
What do you think? I have no problem with Russell either, but what would you think about Kyle Sylvester as well?
I was thinking that too.
He had a number of years in police work and has
You're right.
some interrogative experience.
I have the utmost confidence in his integrity.
And that's who I was going to suggest, this Kyle Sylvester. Yes. I think these great minds are coming together here.
Anyone else got anything for Dan? Harvey?
Dan, I really admire and respect what you've just done. I think that it's obvious that there would be some intimidation by people responding to you. And I think it's really a classy and intelligent thing you've done. And I really want to say thank you. I appreciate it a great deal. Thank you.
Okay, Joe, let's get back to you. Thank you, Dan.
We fooled with this about long enough. We need to get on the positive and get this figured out instead of backstabbing. We've all been on here. I can't remember hardly any times in 13 years that we walk out of this room happy. Usually it's right after we finalize the budget. But not everybody's happy. But we move on and we figure out what we're going to do. And everybody tries to make this the best county in the state of Arkansas, that they can, and they do everything they can to make that happen. We need to quit the backbiting and just focus on the positives and get this figured out. It's not that hard. We need to get 2 or 3 people to do this, find people that's a good job, and we've got them right here, right in this room, and just get past it that you're not happy with all 3 of them. If you're happy with 2, that's good. That's better than 1, and we can get this done with, because we're just wasting a lot of time saying a lot of stuff. And there's 2 things. When it's all said and done, there'll be more said than done. And number 2, if you don't lie, you don't have to remember what you said. So let's just get it done. And I would encourage somebody to make the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Russell, will you do this for us? Come on. We need your help.
You're here.
Does anybody ask Kyle?
So then we would.
I think, Russell, will you do this?
Judge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Judge?
Yes, well, no, wait, I got 2 in front of you. Okay, Sue?
Thank you, Madam Judge. This will seem a little off topic. I apologize, but I wanted to make sure I understand what J.P. Dennis had said. I think I understood that he did sort of a mini investigation of his own at the road department, and I want to know if he kept a record of that and if that would be available to these investigators.
It would be, yeah. Yes.
Okay.
I didn't keep real accurate records. Like I didn't write down in a pad what they were saying to me. But yes, I have accurate recall of what they said. We'll certainly do.
And it would be okay for you to share that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank
Karen?
No, mine was Kyle Sylvester, so it's over with.
Pardon?
Yes, Kyle has declined. Kyle
Okay.
has declined. So
Okay,
we're back to
Ann?
Russell.
Since we're looking at, and Russell has accepted, but Tom Lundstrom has police training, investigation, and I'm going to make a motion that Tom Lundstrom be part of the team and that Robert Dennis be the other part of the team. Robert has already done part. He has the pictures. He knows, and he's fair, and he doesn't have any bias
And
one way or
that's
the
freedom of
other.
information violation.
What?
Having 2 or 3 JPs, you can't have them. That's FOI violation.
Unless you have.
Oh, that's right. Oh, okay. That's well. Anyway, I think Tom should be a part of that.
So don't we have Eva and Russell right now?
Can we do
Yes.
Eva and Russell?
Well, is there, pardon me, folks, I didn't hear a motion to that effect. Was there
I
a
move.
formal motion to substitute Russell Hill for Dan Short?
So moved.
I make a Can I do it formally?
I think
Okay.
Lisa just did it.
Okay, I second it.
Okay,
I
what
think.
it is, we have a motion on the floor to supplement Dan Short with Russell Hill and Eva Madison, and then we'll have Mr. Gale part of that group. Is that the understanding? Please say yes.
Is that a friendly amendment?
Okay. Are we ready for the vote?
Yes.
Lisa,
Now, this would be on the main motion 5.1 as amended.
Just point of clarification, you used the word supplement. Are we supplementing Mr. Hill to that or replacing him?
well, we will be replacing
Okay.
Dan with Russell, yes. Okay, Carly, would you please call the roll?
John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison,
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison,
Yes.
Sue Madison,
Yes.
Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Joe Patterson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery,
Yes.
Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis,
Yes.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
I cannot believe we've got this many votes. That's a yes. Thank you.
See how easy that was when you just decide you're going to do it?
Well, I think we all should thank Mr. Short for being such a...
And Mr. Hill.
And Mr. Hill for being
Thank
such
you.
a gentleman.
Yes.
Yeah, Russell. Yeah.
You get roped.
So the next thing I think we have, that is passed. The next thing we have, an ordinance for I've lost my papers here, for an appropriation ordinance. Who's, John? That's yours.
I just brought this up since the body of Eva's letter indicated that she may need some funds. She may not. I know she's pretty conscious of county taxpayers' money, but I thought it'd be an opportunity for us to move forward quickly without having some problems. Thank you.
Do you need to read it?
John, you want me to read it?
Yeah.
Steve, will you please read?
Thank you. An ordinance appropriating the amount of $3,000 from the general fund to the general services budget for 2015 to fund the investigation of county bridges. Article 1, there is hereby appropriated the amount of $3,000 from the general fund to the special projects line item of the general services budget for 2015.
Thank you, Steve.
Do you make a motion to adopt this?
Yes, I'll make a motion to adopt 6.1.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Carly, call the roll, please.
John Furman,
Yes.
Ann Harbison, Sharon Lloyd,
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom,
Yes.
Eva Madison, Sue Madison, Joel Maxwell,
Yes.
Joe Patterson,
Yes.
Butch Pond,
Yes.
Bill Ussery, Daniel Balls,
Yes.
Harvey Bowman, Rick Cochran, Robert Dennis, Lisa Ecke.
Thank you very much. Yes.
I saved the county $200 this weekend because I got myself elected to the Association of Arkansas Quorum Courts Board, and they pay my mileage. So
We have a little bit of housekeeping we need to do now. Now, I know Lisa brought up the subject of having the investigations here in this room. What you will need to do, if that is your choice, then Karen would work with you on making sure this room is available. So that's open for discussion. Lisa?
Thank you, Judge. The reason I brought up this room, it's not the fifth floor, but it is county business, and we have audio recording, and we also have video available to us, which would keep us from having to hire a court recorder. We do have to pay. Karen, do we still have to pay for the room? I thought in our conversation. Yeah, so it wouldn't. There would be no charge to us for using this room. We just have to schedule it with Karen for the interviews. I'm just looking at it from the budget point of view. And it is county business, and this is the way I feel. If they're coming here to be interviewed, then the weight of what is being asked of them, in truth, they will feel secure in that I'm doing that which is right. And it's here in this place and not somewhere off premise. And it's no charge to our budget.
Thank you, Lisa. Dan, you got a suggestion?
Yes, I do. I appreciate your recommendation as far as saving money for the county. However, when you're doing an investigation, there's a couple of things that get in the way. One is taking notes or messing with a recorder to try to capture that. Eva made the recommendation that we get a court reporter, and I thought that was a great idea because you have someone then who is professionally trained to capture everything that's said. And in so doing that, she also makes a transcription, or he makes a transcription of that, and you've got a finished product. It takes a whole lot less time from the investigator's work, and it gives you a finished product that nobody can question because they're a trained court reporter. So I would recommend that you strongly consider having a court reporter do that. It leaves a whole lot more time for the investigative team.
Judge, may I?
Yes, would you, Steve?
I don't know if y'all have it in mind, and Eva, you're the one who brought this up, but that would ordinarily be another thing you would get an RFQ for. Now, I know court reporters are, I don't want to get into the weeds with that, but you need to get them on board quickly. And
I agree.
So I'm going to ask you, did you have somebody in mind?
I did not. The only thing I considered was that Professional Reporters has a conference room across the street in the bank building. One of the things is many court reporters have a conference space available. So I was trying to think about somebody close that we could use sort of for both purposes, and they don't charge you separately for the conference room. I was very mindful of trying to find a room without an expense. I just wasn't sure we could get there, and I think we had to allow for the possibility of an expense. It occurred to me that our assessor may have a conference room that could work. I have conference rooms in my building, and my building is right behind the courthouse, but I didn't want to suggest my office if somebody thought that would be unfair. I think that Mr. Hill and I can work together to find a location, but I think you're right. On the RFQ for the court reporter, I hadn't really anticipated that. And, I mean, I have court reporters I use all the time that I would ask to bid, but I don't want to pick one for county work. I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, in order to, no, I think it doesn't affect the ordinance, but I think we better do an RFQ for the court reporter, and we'll get it done as quickly as the law allows.
Question along that, do we need then an amendment to not start the 2-week time frame that's provided for in the ordinance until after the RFQ and the court reporter has been attained?
The ordinance gave the team the authority to come back and ask for an extension if they need it. I don't know that you necessarily need to build that in today, but I suspect that if we have to wind up doing an RFQ process, yeah, they're going to need more than 2 weeks to complete.
Could we front load that and give them the 2 weeks starting after the RFQ process has been finished and maybe avoid having to meet again just to pass that?
Yes, and now that you bring that up, there's another point. We forgot to do public comment before 5.1 was passed. Joel, Butch, if you would entertain, this is my suggestion, if you would entertain the 2-week period beginning after the court reporter is engaged, and then reopen 5.1 for that purpose and to allow for public comment. That's what.
Second.
I was the second.
Okay, and I think that.
Point of order, because I'm confused what we're doing. Are we expunging the vote at which that passes?
You're reconsidering it to add the language that Joel suggested.
I think a motion to reconsider has to be put forward by somebody voting not on the winning side.
Well,
everybody
you could do
for
it by, but you could do it by unanimous consent otherwise as well, and you have to reopen the vote because there was no public comment.
So what motion is necessary right now? I'm really confused. Should we expunge the vote and do it over?
That would work. And motion to expunge would work.
I move we expunge the vote by which ordinance 5.1
One.
was adopted.
Needs a second.
I have a motion and a second to expunge the vote so we can bring this to the public comment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Now, before you do that and bring it to public comment,
Consider Joel's amendment friendly.
And then what we're doing is we're going to wait till we get the RFQs, then we'll set the time frame for 2 weeks. Is that satisfactory?
I make a motion that we wait until the RFQ process has been completed and a court reporter has been attained or retained before the 2-week window starts.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Dan?
I have one other point. Typically, we advertise the RFQs 2 weeks running. So if you want to shorten that period of time by a vote of the committee, this would be the time to do that. That would allow us to maybe make 2 advertisements in 1 week.
Don't we have some employees that are court reporters?
They all work for the judges. That won't work. Okay.
What's the legal requirement?
I'm embarrassed to tell you I don't know that off the top of my head. I do know that because it's professional services, it's an RFQ process. I would be, with due respect to Dan, I would be a little hesitant to shorten it because though typically they're akin to bidding processes, and if you shorten them, you give yourself room for a challenge.
I think my feeling is we need to do the RFQs legally, and then we need to set the date. That's my theory.
I have a complication, I'm sorry.
My calendar is clear for the next 2 weeks. It's not so good in May. So the delay is, I've got a trip in early May, that's
Then Tom does it.
The ordinance, although you expunge the vote, has a backup for you, Eva, in Mr. Lundstrom. Not that.
No, you don't want to do that with an investigation.
That we have to bid on. In other words, if we can get a court recorder for under $5,000, can we do that without bid?
I don't know, but I'll find out. And if that's true, then we'll start the investigation right away.
The judge should have some kind of a we used to call that. In other words, where you could spend up to $5,000 just on your own decision without a meeting and a vote.
Y'all took it all away from me. I'm teasing.
But anyway, I think that'd be something worth checking into.
We will check back that in the morning, and we'll have Karen to notify everyone. If we can, we'll get it started.
Quick question, I guess, of clarification of the process. If the video cameras and the audio is running, could the court reporter not transcribe that at some later date after that's been? Okay.
Well, I say that. Look, this is not an official court. This is not an official court proceeding. I actually have questions about swearing people in. My understanding, the court reporter is there for the sake mainly of convenience. So, well, not convenience, for accuracy and convenience. So, yes, I guess would be the answer. I had to take off my trial lawyer hat for a second and say, yeah, I guess they could.
Could we not let the video cameras run, do it on a reasonable time frame, handle this RFQ or whatever process or however that works after the videos are done and transcribe it in a more congenial fashion?
Joe, will you hush?
No, that's good. The judge, I think he's got a good point. Yeah.
I'll just work with Mr. Hill to find a location where he and I can record and have a backup, Joe, and then we can. A court reporter certainly can come along and get that later.
There you go. Well, you did expunge, but you have not had public comment, which is what needs to happen now, unless there are further comments from the court.
Do I have any public comments? Let's do a vote again.
Now,
Carly.
Butch, the appropriate thing to do would be to move to adopt 5.1 again.
Again.
I have a motion and a second. Carly, any other discussion? Speak now or hold your peace. Carly?
John Furman.
Yes.
Ann Harbison.
Yes.
Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joel Maxwell.
Yes.
Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls. Harvey Bowman. Rick Cochran. Robert Dennis. Lisa Ecke.
Passed.
Do we have any other business to come before this court?
Just got 11 when the plan comes together.
Huh?
You just got 11 when the plan comes together.
But even if it takes all night.
I move we adjourn.
I have
I
a second.
second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you guys very